At 87 years old, country legend Bill Anderson has carried more stories than most men could live through in 10 lifetimes. Songs, secrets, and shadows hidden behind that whisper of a voice. But there's one story he's never told until now. A story that reaches back more than 6 decades, anchored to a single night, a single conversation, with the man who haunted him ever since, Hank Williams, Sr. In a revelation fans never expected, Bill finally admits what Hank said that night. Words so sharp they nearly drove him away from music forever. For years, people wondered why Anderson hesitated whenever Hank's name came up. Why there was always a weight behind his tributes. Now the silence is breaking. And the truth is darker than anyone imagined. Because behind the king of country stood not just brilliance, but a warning, a wound, and a mystery that Bill Anderson carried all his life. Whispering Bill, born in South Carolina on November 1, 1937, was never a powerhouse singer. His voice didn't roar, it lingered, smooth and low, like honey sliding across warm bread. But his gift wasn't volume. It was truth. He wrote songs that captured fragility, heartbreak, the tender ache of ordinary lives. And long before he became one of the most decorated songwriters in Nashville history, Bill was just a college kid at the University of Georgia, scribbling poems between classes and dreaming of being a sports writer. Fate, however, had other plans. In the late 1950s, Bill penned City Lights, a ballad dripping with loneliness and regret. When Ray Price recorded it, the song rocketed to number 1. Overnight, the door to Nashville blew wide open. But with success came pressure, and with pressure came ghosts. The deeper Bill stepped into the music world, the more he felt its shadows. The Opry was alive with giants, Lefty, Patsy, Hank. All chasing something, fame, escape, salvation, but none of them seemed to find peace. And for Bill, no shadow loomed larger than Hank Williams. Though Hank had died before Bill arrived in Nashville, his presence never left. People spoke of him like he was still alive. Not always in reverence, sometimes in fear. Tales of his temper, his demons, and his curses swirled around every corner. The most chilling rumor? That Hank had once stared a young singer down and said, "You won't last. This place will eat you alive." Bill dismissed it as legend, until one night, when he swore he heard those words himself. In a half-forgotten 1961 radio interview, Bill described rehearsing alone in the Ryman Auditorium. The rafters empty, the air heavy. As he played, the stage lights flickered. Static hissed through the speakers. And then, faint but undeniable, a voice whispered from the dark, "Don't sing it if you don't live it." He froze. Nobody there. He brushed it off, until it happened again, clearer. "That's what killed me." He kept it quiet. In Nashville, weakness was dangerous. But in his journals, only revealed years later. Bill described recurring dreams where Hank sat across from him in a smoky bar booth. Each dream darker than the last. Hank's eyes hollow, his words cryptic, "You know too much. Tell them what I did, when they're ready." The dreams became obsessions. His songs began to sound less like poetry and more like messages. Mama sang a song. The corner of my life. Music soaked with longing, confusion, and the pull of unseen forces. By the mid-60s, Bill was an Opry staple. But fame brought him no peace. His marriage was fraying, his kids distant. Nights found him alone, scribbling lyrics no one ever heard. "Every time I sing," he told one producer, "I feel like Hank's watching from the balcony." Nobody laughed, because most of them felt it, too. Hank's shadow lingered, but for Bill, it was more than legend. It was a burden. A secret. The unraveling of his personal life through the late 60s and 70s was slow, almost invisible to the outside world. On stage, he was still the whispering gentleman. At home, he was chasing ghosts. His wife confided to friends, "He's loving the dead more than the living." When divorce finally came, it devastated him. And during that same period, Bill began receiving strange letters. Always typewritten, always postmarked from Alabama. Signed only with an H. Most were cryptic reminders: "You owe me a story. It ain't over, Bill." At first, he thought they were jokes. But in 1974, after a concert in Montgomery, an elderly woman handed him an envelope, whispering, "This belonged to Hank." He wanted it given to the right one. Inside, 3 handwritten pages. A song Hank never recorded. Lyrics of betrayal, spiritual debt, and the line that cut deepest: "A young poet I cursed before I passed." Bill locked it away for decades. But his music changed. In interviews, he admitted some songs felt like they came from someone else's hand. "When you leave that way, you can never go back" carried the same themes: death, regret, no second chances. Fans loved it. Few knew it was inspired by Hank's lost pages. By the late 90s, grief consumed him again. His wife Betty, his anchor, passed away after a battle with cancer. Bill disappeared into silence, his home a mausoleum of dust and shadows. He rarely touched his piano. Friends said he paced the halls like a man waiting for something that never arrived. But in those years, he began speaking of Hank again. Not in interviews, only in whispers. Of a letter he sometimes read aloud in the middle of the night. Words he treated like a prayer. When he returned to writing, his songs were darker. He claimed some lines weren't his at all, but Hank's. He began visiting Hank's grave at night, staying for hours. Locals swore they saw him talking, gesturing, arguing with someone unseen. His basement turned into a shrine: tapes, radios, artifacts. The centerpiece, a 1940s radio that crackled to life every Friday at 3:17 a.m., carrying faint guitar notes and the sound of footsteps on gravel. Not slipping, he told his son. Tuning in. Then came the photograph. Discovered behind his piano in 2017, a faded snapshot of Bill and Hank, laughing side by side. Bill swore he never posed for it. He only met Hank once, briefly. Yet there it was, with Hank's handwriting on the back, "For Bill. When it starts making sense, don't run." By 2023, whispers spread through Nashville of something called the Hank tapes. Not an album. Not demos. Something else. Some swore they contained a presence. That year, Bill stood on the Opry stage and delivered a set of ballads no one had ever heard. Ancient, sorrowful, haunting. The audience wept. Afterwards, when asked if the tapes were real, Bill only said, "They were never mine to begin with." Weeks later, he retired quietly. He withdrew to his Nashville home, surrounded by ghosts, the photo of Hank, the old briefcase no one ever saw opened. And then, on his birthday, he posted a single line online: "Some songs aren't written. They're remembered." At 87, Bill Anderson rarely speaks to the press. Yet people still whisper about him, like he's a living conduit, half in this world, half in Hank's. A man who heard something all those years ago, and never stopped listening.